It says it's being live streamed.
Leave meeting.
All right, I'm just waiting for it to go through. Setting up your meeting for YouTube Live.
It says it's being live streamed.
Okay.
Leave meeting.
All right, I'm just waiting for it to go through. Setting up your meeting for you. Just waiting for it to go through. Setting up your meeting for YouTube Live. Okay. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to another edition of Journey to Self. We are so happy to have all of you here. I am so delighted to be sharing the stage, shall I say, this virtual stage with my dear friends, but also brilliant authors and coaches who have so much wisdom and life experience to share with us. Tonight, we're going to continue our conversation on the topic of self-love, but we're going to take a slightly different angle and touch on different aspects of self-love and how we got started on this journey, but also how we've been able to overcome and hopefully give you the tools that you need in your toolkit on your journey towards your self-discovery and your journey towards loving yourself more. So I'm going to pause. I'm going to turn it over to you today, Laura, because I know that you want to kick us off with some thoughts. And from there, we will allow for this conversation to unravel.
Yeah, thanks, Vicki. So last week, I was honored to ask myself and David and also Vicki the question of where were you in your journey when you realized that there was an issue with loving yourself? For me, I was searching outside of myself, trying to fill a void. I'm sure that all of you can relate to that. And so I just wanted to kick us off today with asking Chrissy, we'll start with Chrissy, that same question. Chrissy, so where were you when you just said, there's something that I have to fix within me?
Yeah, I think probably a part of me knew, but it wasn't completely conscious. It was kind of that shadow part of me. And I talked a little bit about this with Vicki, but it wasn't really until 2021 when I had the most horrendous breakup in the middle of Nashville with a guy that I was absolutely in love with. And I basically went crazy, I guess. And after that, I realized there was something inside of me that was not okay, that I had some issues, and led me down rabbit holes of attachment issues and codependency. And I mean, it was still like another year, it was still a really long journey to discover that I had these issues. And finally, it was just like, and people would tell me, you got to love yourself first, Chrissy. You got to love yourself first. And I didn't know what that meant. Like I was kind of like you, Laura. I was trying to fix people, trying to, if I could fix them, if I could be what they wanted me to be, you know what I mean? And so it was just a really long journey of self-discovery. And it probably really wasn't until the beginning of this year that I honestly could finally, for the first time, say, like, I love myself. I am worthy of, I already have love inside of me, and that was something. And again, I'm going to reference Gabby Bernstein, because she, last year when I discovered her, that's probably where a lot of my healing came from. She had some books that I started doing, and some different tools in these books, such as like journaling prompts and things like that. And that's really where I finally was like, okay, I am worthy, and I don't need these men to tell me I'm worthy. I was a love junkie. That's what I say. I'm a reformed love junkie. And yeah. And so once I started doing that, and now, like, I'm still, like I've said before, I don't know if I said it last week, but I'm still not really dating because I don't know if I'm ready. And the fact that I know I've told Vicki, the fact that I can even say that, and the way I see it is like, I love myself so much. Like, you got to be pretty damn good for me to want to give up my, like, where I am right now. So, and that's a huge thing for me. So yeah, that's kind of where the catalyst began for me. So
Yeah, beautifully said. And I like what you said last week about just seeking that validation outside of yourself. Like, am I valid? Am I worthy? And it's
yeah.
almost like we're just looking for the proof outside of us, and
Mhm.
and we don't take anything within as valid. It has to come from outside of us when we're at that state. So
And can I quickly add something to it? So I love what you talked about, Chrissy. And I think that one dimension I'd like to add to this is that we can seek validation from so many different sources. So it could be in the form of a romantic relationship, but it can also be in the form of friend groups. I think it can come in the form of siblings, parents, where you're seeking that acceptance and validation from without, right? But I think that sometimes we can fall into the trap of thinking that self-love is only when it comes to romantic relationships. I think it's any relationships, and seeking for that validation from anyone that you like really look up to and put on a pedestal. And I love what Gabby Bernstein and Jay Shetty have actually heard talk about. They said, don't put anybody else on a pedestal. Everyone is equal and the same. And that really hit me. I mean, it sounds so basic, but it, for some reason, was so profound for me when I heard it, because I was like, oh, that is so true. So I just wanted to, add to that, just because I think that what you talked about is just so true for so many of us.
I agree. How about you, Chelsea? You're already on the screen. So what was it that what maybe a catalyst in your life, or just when you're like, something's wrong, I'm missing something, there's a hole, there's an emptiness. What was your experience when you realized that something needed to change?
Well, I am an advocate, or I speak about depression a lot, creatively and through my works. I had struggled with depression since I was a little kid, and it went maybe not unnoticed, but untended for a long time, with the adults in my life. So for me, I was always kind of aware that I had issues emotionally, or that I was insecure and all of that, right? And there was it came to a point of reality, or like hitting me on top side of the head, until a little later, because I used to identify with my work a lot when I was in my early 20s. I had the same job for a decade, so I used to do sales, and I thought I would always have that job. I was heavily identified with it, and I overworked a lot. By the time I started having kids at the age of 30, that kind of did the identity crisis a little bit, right? Gotta love those. So like it did a 180 on everything. I stopped working because I realized I was struggling with it. And I wanted to start doing different business ventures, but I realized that I was not in a space internally as I needed to be to have the production externally. So for me, it was a need of kind of just trying to find myself through work, but it was kind of getting on a deeper level of soul. So I have an aunt who's a therapist, and she's like, someone I've always looked up to and was a bit more spiritual, if she talked about it or not, right? And she had talked to me on and off a lot through my 20s, and she knew I was depressed, but she never told me that I was depressed. And I don't think that ever crossed my mind, like, okay, I'm struggling with depression, and it's pretty obvious I've been struggling with depression. So one day on the phone, she was just like, well, Chelsea, it's because you're depressed. And I don't think she realized that I didn't realize that. So it like kind of rung deep in me a little bit. And I was like, no, my immediate reaction was like, no, I don't know, I'm not, but when I thought about it, I was like, yes, I really am depressed. And so it led me on to this like soul journey. I was already having vivid dreams. I'm a dream analysis coach now. So like my dreams were my personal experience a lot, leading me into a lot of self-discovery, why I'm such a miserable human being, basically, and self-love overall. And I always say that, so it went from the dream analysis, kind of diving deep, seeing a bit of my internal aspects and imbalances. Fast forward a few months later, I did Joe Dispenza was a huge one, but it's not so much a self-love as depression, right? The self-love really came when I started doing my life coaching sessions and diving deep into going to school for that and doing the curriculum. So I went to this one school program called Lumia, which is ran by John Kim, and he does a lot of relationship coaching, and he's a therapist who's also a life coach, and that's his niche. So I remember being in one of his classes, and he was talking about his theory about the container theory and how we view ourselves as containers. We are either a solid container, and it doesn't have any leaks or cracks in it, or we are a container that has cracks in it. And when he started breaking down that concept to us for like a 2-hour class period, it just rung very deeply within me, even more so. I was like, not only am I depressed, but I have some serious self-love issues that are not just internal, but now affecting me externally in the relationships I have in my life and had chosen before. So for me, that was a big one. So it was ideas of having non-negotiables. What would that be to a person? I don't think we talk about that enough. We self-sacrifice a lot. We tend to bury ourselves deep. So for me, it was a very psychological, long trail of mental health, of really trying to understand that I did not love myself and where I was struggling and where those points were. So it was like I felt like I wasn't someone that could just take it with a ring of a bell once. It took a couple different moments within a year time that really pulled it together to where I understood, okay, it is a self-love issue. So then from there, I was able to work better on moving forward. And that's a whole nother story of moving forward and how to use it as a tool, right? But yeah. So it was a few moments.
Yeah, I think it was for all of us. I mean, I wish some people just they transform overnight. It's not impossible because a lot of it is the way of thinking, and a lot of it is also the energy that we have put onto ourselves already, or growing up is we're carrying all that energy with us and we're processing it, or we're not letting it go. But you reminded me of a couple of things. Last week I talked about how the walls that I had within a relationship was equivalently equal to the walls that I had up within myself. And it reminded me that we can only meet other people as deeply as we've met ourselves. So I realized that, because everything's a mirror, like literally everything is a mirror. And you also made me think about how your business, like our businesses, you guys, and everything that we create is an expression of our spirit. It's an expression of our highest expression, and so if there's an issue in your business, you fix it within, and it just transforms on the outside. And that's how life is all around. Is everybody is a mirror to you, so you can just kind of reflect and say, what do I need? What do I see in this person that's bothering me? Or, utilize the mirrors and other people in that way. So yeah, well, thanks for sharing. That was well said.
Yeah, I like what you just said, Laura, too, about by fixing it on the inside, it seems to fix itself on the outside. I think that the reason that is because when you see clearly inside, you also see clearly in it. We'll call everything a problem that isn't the problem if we can't see it, like it's once you can identify in yourself, then you see clearly what it is outside of yourself, because a blind spot in is a blind spot out, so that clarity comes. And that's why I think like the journey to self is so important, because if you can have absolute clarity over who you are, then your life is so much more clear, and problems are not nearly as big, because I think that the unknown feels big a lot of times, but a lot of times you might step in the unknown depth, and it's a very shallow little puddle that's very easy to traverse. Sometimes it'll swallow you whole, so you got to be careful, but it can be either one.
I love that, because like you just said, when the unknown is very scary, and so sometimes that fear, like when things are familiar to us, that's something I've had to really struggle with. I dated the same type of people, kept having the same lessons over and over and over, because that was familiar to me. And it wasn't a good thing, but it was familiar. So it felt safe. It felt comfortable, But I always say let the fear be your guide and let the triggers be your guide, because when like you said, Laura, things are a mirror to us. So when we're being triggered or things are happening in our life, like we have to really look inside of ourselves too, and let that just kind of be a guide for us. So I think that's also beautiful, folks.
Yes, and the fear and excitement, you've probably heard this, that it's the same exact energy. And I didn't understand that because I was like, no, it feels different because I'm either excited or I'm terrified. There's no like, those are the opposite, you know. But what I realized is that our belief system filters everything. And our belief system is a conglomeration of a lot of thoughts. So it is the exact same energy, just different thoughts are attached to it. So when you are in the unknown and we're like scared of what might happen, it's just those scary thoughts that are attached to it. But if we're excited about, ooh, I'm excited to see who shows up today. I'm excited to see who we're meant to serve today. You know, when you just change the thinking, the experience of the energy changes. It's amazing. I was like, oh, okay. So now I just think of everything as like, you know, I think it was Laura Ingalls who my mom maybe intentionally named me after her. But I read it in a book yesterday that she just put that positive filter on everything. And it wasn't a challenging life to her. It was an exciting adventure for her to try to do all these things under all these crazy circumstances. So I just wanted to add that in there.
I love that point. I actually read that there have been scientific studies that have been conducted that showed that the body responds in the exact same way to both anxiety and anxiousness. So when we're both anxious and excited, our heart rate will pace, right? The heart like pace elevates. You have that same sense of nervousness in the body. So the body responds to both emotions, even though they seem to be on the opposite spectrums of each other. It's not. So I love that you equated it to the energy, but even, you know, on a physical dimension, we have the same response in our physical bodies to the two that seem to be complete opposite emotions that the body may feel. So I love that insight. So I have a question for this group that I know you all didn't anticipate. So we called this series The Journey to Self. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what that means to each of you. I'm going to call.
Yeah, call on someone. Oh, Chelsea.
Oh, yeah, I was
I'll
like,
go
who
first.
wants to go first?
I'll go first. I love this stuff.
I was looking at Chelsea, actually.
I was going to give everyone a chance to say it before me. Okay, journey to self. I love this stuff. I think at the end of the day, just it is a lesson of unconditional love for ourselves to put it outwards to the people in our lives. But that is just so easily said and much harder done. It does involve a lot, so I'm not going to make it a whole spiel, but I do believe that our self-discovery is a spiral and it gets deeper and deeper. And ultimately it is leaving us to this idea of unconditional love at the end of the day, connecting with those around us, connecting spiritually to the nature, or even consciously or universally in very magical or bigger ways than us. So for me, I love history. I love psychology, I love spirituality, I love a lot of things, and I think they always lead to the same concept. And I will leave just off on this. Back in the day when primitive man was disconnected from a lot around them, they looked to the stars and within themselves to connect to the world around them. If it was in the hunt, if it was in the stories around the fire pit or looking at the stars, we have always been on this self-discovery journey of what is humanity? What is mankind? Who are we deep down? And it is always a mirror, and it has a lot of lessons in tow, a lot of healing, but it really does show us at a core who we are and why we exist.
I love that. That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Um, I'll follow you. I mean, I agree with pretty much everything that you just said, because I'm like I've told you before, I resonate with you a lot. I love the psychology, the spirituality, all of that stuff. But I have a quote that it was actually on my Facebook page for a while, and I think it says, the of all the roads she traveled, the journey back to herself was the most magnificent. And I thought that is because there's no more important love than what we have for ourselves. Like, it all starts with us. And again, it's so much easier said than done, and I know, Chelsea, you said this, and I've said it in a couple videos, but I try to tell people it's not all rainbows and fucking butterflies out here. It's really not, but we make it sound like it is. Because it is hard. And I don't have a lot. It's hard to tell you what to do. I mean, like, meditation and journaling and really going within and sitting with your thoughts and sitting with yourself. And it is one of the most painful things. Like, the universe sent me out here in the country. Like, I'm out in the sticks. I sit here worried that I'm going to lose you guys in a minute because my internet sucks. But I know that the universe gave me this house. I couldn't find anything else for 2 years. And I've lived here for 2 years. And I think the universe did that on purpose so that I had to be by there's no neighbors. I have deer. That's it. And it's like, but I just think that the journey to self is just going within and really like getting rid of those distractions, put the phone away for an hour, sit outside in nature, walk barefoot in the grass, hug a tree, I mean, all of those things I think can really just help you get that groundedness and understand that, like, it's great to have a tribe. It's great to have the outside people, because we are social beings, but it all starts with us. And so we have to go within first. And those are just some tips that I've learned along the way. So
Yeah,
I'll go. Oh, you go ahead, David.
you sure?
Yeah, for
All right.
100%.
All right. The way I kind of have seen the journey to self, the importance of it is, it's actually, Laura, what you touched on earlier about how our beliefs shape our experience. And so if you're lost in experience, you're never going to be able to understand what your beliefs are. So you're not going to really be able to know what is shaping your experience. But then if you don't know what your beliefs are, then you don't know what's shaping your beliefs. And so you really have to come to an understanding of who you are, because not only does it put your life and your existence, so to speak, in context, it reveals what is interpreting, what is doing the interpreting, what is doing the shaping, what is doing the believing. What is that? It's this thing that is beyond the symbolism of language, and it's just direct, it's pure. And if you can't get down to that pure contact, that felt presence that's unadulterated by any assumption or opinion or what I would call lies, delusions, and neuroses, then you're never going to be able to gain anything from life, because you're interacting with a mist. You're interacting with an illusion. And so you won't gain traction. You won't gain understanding. You won't gain wisdom. You'll have no application. You'll really sideline yourself without knowing who and what you are, because the car doesn't move until the tires hit the road. So self-knowledge is really where the rubber meets the road. And when I was in the Army in basic training, your first week and a half or 2 weeks of in processing, every day they call day zero, because the training hasn't started, but you're there and you're going through training, but the actual thing itself that you came there to accomplish hasn't even begun. So until you know yourself, it's day zero every day. You're not gaining any traction. You're not going anywhere. You're not getting any wisdom. You're not developing your inner world. You're not developing your soul. And I think that's the root of every global problem, unless you want to get into an argument about intelligent evil, which is not what this forum is for. Like, it really comes down to almost every problem can be solved by understanding that you are part of a whole, and you're not going to be able to understand that unless you see yourself clearly. You know, it's like putting the piece of the puzzle. It's the context that you begin with is that you exist. And if you can't understand that context, then you're not going to understand any context.
Yeah, well said. My explanation is pretty much in line with yours, David. We have to have beliefs in order to have a physical experience. So we're spirits having a human experience, but without any beliefs, we can't actually experience this physical reality. So we either come into the world and learn some beliefs real fast to carry us through life, or we adopt them as we go. And then sometimes those are limiting us, or sometimes those are assisting us in a positive way. But again, we don't always know what those beliefs are. We don't know what we've adopted. And then in the beginning of life, it's a little different. Like, I don't know if I can say this for everybody, but for me, I was super lighthearted and high spirited and like a free spirit when I was younger, you know, a kid all the way up to like, I don't know, I turned an adult and something happened, like bad stuff. No, you just try to fit into society at that point because you're like, oh crap, I got to figure life out. And I was living the avatar of Laura myself from my ego and the perception of the personality. And I knew who that was. I thought I knew who I was, but what I've learned over time is that, I have chosen to have a physical experience and meet the ego and experience separation. So the separation is to experience the darkness and to experience negativity, because that's essentially, there's no good or bad, but separation is that negativity and unity is positivity and light. And so we come and we have that journey of separation and ego and negativity, and then we transform back into the light. And that is, to me, the journey to self. And that's the entire point. I fully believe that we're taking these lessons and the experience back to our soul, on a probably a real-time basis, and just saying, this is what I learned. This was my journey. This was my experience. This is what I learned in real time. Because if we have a next life or not, or whatever you believe, we have this experience, and the path is the point. The journey is the point. It's not the destination. It's literally what you're traveling in every day. And so when we talk about the journey back to self, I'm realizing that Laura, this avatar that I'm playing, is a character, and the self is so much bigger than I ever imagined, because you can tune into the spiritual nature of yourself so deep that there's things that I can't even put into words that I've experienced, but it feels like pure love. And that's the best explanation I can have for the self, but it's all one. We're all one self. So it's not just this me, the self, it's us, the self. So that's what it means to me.
I think that's beautiful, Laura. And I am with you on that. I totally know that we are eternal spiritual beings living a temporary human experience. And that's what we are. We come here to forget who we are so we can then remember who we are eventually. We'll all get here eventually. Just takes some longer than others, right?
Yeah, we all do. And it all depends on, what life experience we wanted to have. What did we plan? And I don't know who I said this to, but I don't know if you guys have ever seen Quantum Leap, the new one. You ever see that show?
I've heard of it. I haven't seen it yet.
Okay, well, Quantum Leap is like an old show in the 90s, but they remade it. And the guy had, so the new series, he goes and creates all these leaps. He leaps from timeline to timeline to timeline, but he did it intentionally to get himself stuck in this timeline path in order to correct something. And he didn't tell anybody about it, and everybody's super mad that he did it, because his girlfriend, like, he lost his memory too. So anyways, he's leaping from time to time to time and right wrongs and all this stuff. And I realized that in order for him to live out that experience, he knows that he set that up for himself. So he had to find this really deep trust for his path. And so one of the things that I teach is to just trust the way that your path unfolds, because that's not just something that's handed to us and it's like, okay, go have fun with life. It's something that we deliberately said, how about I experience this so it could bring me closer to the light? Because without the darkness, we can't see the light. We're just like listening to this beautiful music and these harps all the time, or whatever you want to imagine, right? So yeah, that's what I think of. So you just ultimate trust for your path. Yeah.
Yeah, we did choose what we were going to learn. This is just my imagination. I imagine us all sitting in the spirit world, like figuring out what we're going to go to, Earth and learn, and like, writing all these contracts out. I don't know. That's what I envision anyway.
That's what I hear. That's what I hear. So yeah. How about you, Vicki?
Oh, you're gonna
Yeah, your turn.
Well, it's interesting. So when Laura said the journey to self, and those words came out of her mouth, it rang so true to me. And I think I think about this in two dimensions. I think on one dimension, at least from my experience, right? There's been the journey to my physical self, right? And I think we touched on the belief systems and how we feel inside, like the emotional, the thought patterns, the beliefs, right? And it was like having to almost like reprogram a lot of the programming, or deprogram a lot of the programming that I had. So there's been kind of that journey to self in that retrospect, in recognizing that I'm not necessarily who I believed I was, right? But then there's also that spiritual journey to self, where it's that remembrance of who I truly am. And that is I remember reading Joe Dispenza's book, and he talks about this concept of the no thing, the nothing, right? And the everything. And I feel like on some level, that's also the journey to self, is the remembrance that I am the nothing and the everything, that paradox. And I love the word journey, because it's exactly that. It's not the destination. It's not. So I'll give you an example of my experience in the last 2 days, right? So I've been trying to set up these Facebook ads. Laura's gonna laugh now, because I am like so technically challenged, right? And or even like I was trying to create like a PDF of something. And I swear to God, it's like technology is here to remind me that it's about the journey and not the destination each and every time, right? Because I get so mired in the physical sense and the physical doingness that I'm like trying to do everything in my power to make technology work for me. So like I tried every which way to create the PDF. I tried every which way to create a survey. I tried every single, like 4 or 5 different tools I would sign up of. I would be like pinging Laura, like, what do I do next? Right? Like, it's like this, like vomit of the brain happening. And, but then it's just like, the spiritual lesson that comes in, right? The remembrance of like, listen, you are exactly where you're supposed to be. And where you're supposed to be is you got to slow down. You got to allow it. It's going to happen. Like if, you are a creator, and if you want it, it will happen for you. It will happen at the perfect time, in the perfect way, maybe not in the way that you imagine it to happen for you, right? And I keep having to go through these remembrances of surrender, like just surrender, just surrender, just surrender. And that I'm this nothing and everything, and so that's why like the word journey really resonates with me. And the self, I feel like there's that physical element to me, right? Like reprogramming, and I will not have these thoughts, and I'm not going to believe this, right? But then there's the higher self, right? And the higher self that truly guides me and truly guides my path and truly takes me on this journey. So I don't know, I've kind of like been in that space, and I've really been reflecting on how, like, the words that we used to name this, and I think it's so deep and so beautiful. And I don't know, I've just kind of been feeling into it. So that's why I wanted to ask you guys what you thought of it.
Yeah. And I think, yesterday when we were talking, and it was a reminder for me too, because we remember and then we forget, because it's part of the human condition, is that it's right here. Like, this is where living is. This is where the gold is, you guys. It's right here. It's not at the end of some goal. And once you accomplish a few of those goals, you realize that we could be the goal getter, that, addicted to goals. Like, okay, let's just keep on making all these goals. Or we could just take life for what it brings to us in every moment, and just show up for what shows up. And actually, that's what I tell myself every day. It's a little note on my computer, is just show up and respond to what shows up. That's all I have to do. Because if I start jumping to those goals that are in my mind, it messes with my emotions, it messes with my energy. I go from excitement to anxiety to maybe impatience. And I'm like, hey, if I can just accept everything right here in this moment, I have no need for patience. Patience doesn't exist because it's not necessary, So that's one thing I wanted to say. And then the other thing, and then I'll let someone else have the mic, is that after we get to that unity of, like, you guys, we are all one. We may all be from the same, soul, maybe the same oversoul. Yeah, we can. What I had to do was say, okay, this is interesting. I like this. I'll stay up here for a while. And then I realized, I still am having a spiritual or a physical experience. I'm still here. So there's a reason I'm still here. And so I had to say, if there's a reason I'm still here, knowing what I know now, what can I do with this information? I can see everybody who's, maybe living within their ego or not realizing that they're not separate from the whole. And I'm like, we're all on our own path. We're all on our own journey. But knowing what I know now, what can I do in the world with all of this experience and knowledge under my belt? Because knowledge doesn't do anything for anybody unless it's shared, right? So that's what brings me to the table and say, this is what I believe, this is what I know. And just like Joe Dispenza, you guys, just like Gabby Bernstein, just like everybody who stepped up and said, this is what I know, it's transformed lives. So that also is part of the journey to self, is realizing we still have a physical experience, and we can't minimize that. We're here for something, not to just be spiritual and float up into the ether, even though I preferred to be there for a long time, So that's why when I do business coaching, I'm like, business coaching is helping people create that highest expression of themselves, but also gain every single form of abundance possible. Because there's not just financial abundance, there's every form. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, we have to share the knowledge, basically, like what you're saying. We have to share it. Like, that's why we're here.
Exactly.
And speaking of which, I'm going to put in your URL to your website, because I think it's full of so much beautiful and rich content. So let me put that in here. LauraPerry.com, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And
I have a tattoo on my arm. I don't know if I showed you guys that, but it says "Let Go," and I got that tattoo after reading Michael Singer's books about letting go. I can tell anybody who's watching this, us right now, like, when I let go and I decided to just let the universe and my higher self guide me, I met you guys. I met this whole panel right here. Like, I just, things really started to transform in my life. So it's easier said than done. I know that, but when you can just trust and have faith that even though you can't see things yet, they're happening and everything's happening for you, it really will transform your life.
Yeah, Michael Singer's book, The Surrender Experience, I was telling Vicky, that book changed my life. I was like, okay, I'll just start saying yes to everything. Funny, because when you learn to make boundaries, you end up saying no to everything. And then you're like, And then you're like, oh, okay. Now it's like that paradox. You're always going through some paradox. It's like, oh, I just learned this like 2 years ago to say no, no, no. And I'm like,
Yeah.
yes, yes, I'll be here on YouTube. Yes. So yeah, it's kind of funny. But that book helped me realize that if I can let things come through me, and just be, then that's all I have to do. There's a built-in control to the universe,
Mhm.
So
I love that.
Chelsea,
David,
David, do you guys
Oh.
have anything? I haven't heard from you guys in a
I
while.
was gonna say, David,
Yeah.
it sounded like you wanted to say something.
I have something I want to say, but it has to go along with what you guys are talking about with your higher self and your guides, but it's a little bit it's slightly different because I do dream analysis. It's a really good space to see a bit of a symbolic visual sometimes of this metaphysical aspects of our life, right? And just to kind of like reconfirm, or maybe anyone listening, it's a very interesting space. And so with a lot of my clients, we do work with like the internal aspects of who we are on like an internal family system concept, but we also have the external consciousness who come to visit us in our sleep too, if it be past loved ones and all. But speaking of your higher self as your guide, also having other guides outside of your higher self. I have had many beautiful experiences watching some of my clients connect in dreamland and also in meditation with their guides. And it's always really odd to express it. So I don't want to express it too much to freak people out. Like some of it's weird, but it's ultimately beautiful because they really do teach us a lot and they're always there telepathically guiding us. Our higher self is a part of the internal family system is what I refer to. So it's a part of us that does guide ourselves, and it's this perfect image of who we are, slightly multidimensional or existing in a very metaphysical way. So it's always beautiful, but I love seeing how we can have the conversations about it, right? And the belief system of it. But I also very much love being in the coach's seat and being able to see people actually experience their guides. And the soul journeys come up a lot. We often, it's crazy. They tell us that, there are humans here who have special abilities or talents who are here to uplift the vibrancy of the planet. And they're really active. So if you're in tuned with your guides or your higher self or not, I would encourage anyone listening to this, open this space up and allow the if it's synchronicity during the day or numbers or however the symbolism shows, but it's also very active at night too. And you would be surprised to see how much metaphysics goes on without us even paying attention.
Hey, Chelsea, I have a question for you and to go along with that, because I want to know a little bit, and I know this is probably a lot, but maybe if you can just shed some light, because I've been trying to really get into my dreams. I've had some that I've remembered recently, I think like the full moon and stuff going on, but do you have any tips for people who are trying to get there and trying to remember what's happening in the dreams? Like how can we better do that? Do you have any tips?
I always say it's like a muscle, you have to go to the gym and work it out, right? Or put some conscious awareness to it. It's not something that just, we do dream, and some dreams are more vivid than others. And I think everyone's a little different. I always say less stress is better. Try not to go to bed stressed out. I think that sometimes it can cause stress dreams, or it just completely shuts the system down, or not shut it down, but you're not remembering the awareness aspect. Okay. So if awareness was a system, we're trying to build that up. I always say try to meditate before you go to sleep, set intentions. It's good to just talk about your dreams or write about them. The more we do that, the more we tend to remember it. And plus people, it's always in the file cabinet. It's never really gone. So you can even try to meditate the next morning, take the fuzzy pieces you remember and try to build up on that a bit more, or lean into it and see what else comes back, because it's always there. But follow me on Facebook. I talk about it a lot. But no, dreams are, I don't know, it's just one way to access the subconsciousness and the pineal gland antenna and all the weird metaphysical parts. But our higher selves are very much interactive with us. And so are our guides. And I don't know, I'm in a good space where I get to see it on a work lane where I'm like, holy crap. I already knew it was real, but the data, I call it data after a while, the amount of data that comes across the board, you're like, oh my God, this is so obvious. So it's cool.
It is. And it's funny that you talk about the higher self, because I taught a class yesterday morning about, I do, business coaching, as I've said, but I was telling everybody's like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do next. I don't know what to step to take. I have all these tasks and all of that. And I was like, so I realized that the real root of the problem was that a lot of people aren't aware of their connection. So as you know, the higher self, it's always connected 100% of the time, but they're not aware of the connection. So we're guided in every area of life, and our business, like I said, is just another highest expression of ourself and another way to experience abundance. So I had to, so I was teaching yesterday, this is how your higher self communicates with you. And so I did a whole class on that. But it's like you said, it's every way, every area of your life, not just business, not just relationships, not just self-love. People that are guided to watch us on this TV show, or on this TV show. Now we have a TV show, you guys.
We have a TV show. Hey, I like where you're going, Laura. That's your higher self coming through.
Can you tell I don't watch TV? Yeah, on this TV show. This is a TV show now. I called the video game console like a video machine. So anyways, so yeah, I mean, we're always guided in every area of life, and just to become aware of the guidance is like a game changer. So yeah.
So not to digress, but I did want to tell you that we had 4 viewers on the YouTube channel. So that's what I was doing. And now I reposted back on Facebook to let more people know that they can come and join us here. So, yeah. Yes. So I wanted to tell you guys that. I find it really fascinating.
Okay, and yeah, for anybody, I want to hear from David too, because I haven't heard what Vicky said. And if anybody has any questions on here or on YouTube, you can put them in the chat, and we will be more than happy to answer those questions. So we would love to interact with you guys. Any questions that you have at all, just put them in the chat, and we will try our best to answer them. David, I haven't heard from you in a while, so.
Yeah, I mean, I dream a lot, but I haven't done a lot of dream analysis or anything. But I mean, for me, dreams typically seem to be a lot of symbolism that needs interpreted. What I've found is that the symbolic language is coming from the emotional experience of life, because our emotions are I guess the radiation of being. It's the only way I really know. It's kind of the fallout of contact between what is the self and what is reality. And in that contact, there is emotion that comes through. But even in that, you eventually see that emotions are also being interpreted, and so dreams for me have helped a lot to interpret emotional states, because I have animals that come through mostly. And there's a place I go sometimes. It's like an animal farm. There's a bunch of animals, and I fly there, and it's fun. But I think that when you're experiencing vivid dreams or something it's kind of like in a movie when something zooms in, or it like pauses on something. It's kind of like the emphasis. And when you look for the emphasis in the symbolism, it's a lot of nothing with moments of everything, like everything's in that symbol. And if you can learn to read the symbolism of your dreams, you're really kind of stitching together the emotional aspect of yourself and what I would call the more rational aspect. And when you begin to stitch those together, you're having a more total experience of your life, and you can begin to see, like for me, I'm trying to give an example because it's all so heady and like, off the ground, but it's like, how do I bring this back in? So for me, I had visions of like a little white rabbit that was getting ripped apart and destroyed, which is pretty terrible, but it represented the destruction of innocence. And when I was able to unlock that, then it brought back experience, which was actual memory of things I had gone through, and that was in my awareness. But a lot of times your dreams are covering up things that you are afraid to feel or things you don't want to remember. So, I mean, anytime you're going through an awakening, and everyone I think here has said it's about awareness, you're bringing the awareness up first symbolically. And then after that, you enter a more grounded perspective, But that's my kind of, wobbly interpretation, because it's not something I deal with a lot. It's just I kind of interpret my own dreams, and that's about it. But
Okay, just a side note. You're familiar with the internal family system. We read the same book. Apply that concept of psychoanalyzing. All of the dreams have symbols, but they also break down into different aspects of ourselves that complete a very large puzzle pieces of picture. So like the inner child has its voice, your masculine and feminine side, your higher self, you as yourself, also processing the emotions or experiences. I always say that as we're building a verbal language, our subconsciousness is building a symbolic language. So what you put in will be used in the program. It's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've actually met what you're talking about. I've met the parts of myself in dream state, so that is a pretty cool experience to kind of introduce. And the way that it presents itself is always very interesting. It can reveal a lot to you if you take the time to take notes.
Who wrote that book? I mean, I'm a little bit familiar with it. I mean, Gabby talks about it some, and so I've heard a little bit about.
Amazing.
Yeah. So what is do you want to put it in the chat? Like who?
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat. So it's called No Bad Parts. I believe his name is Richard Schwartz. I always call him
Dr.
Gary,
Richard Schwartz.
but it's Richard.
I'll put it in my.
It's amazing.
So Chrissy, Gabby Bernstein actually interviewed him on her podcast.
Yes. Okay.
She had him on his podcast, and she's doing a follow-up. She's actually writing a book on IFS.
It's amazing.
Because it's been such a huge part of her healing journey and to overcome her trauma. She didn't remember her trauma. She actually forgot about a very traumatic event in her life, and then she remembered it through IFS therapy. So anyways, so I'm going to ask you guys a question. I know that we started our conversation today on the topic of self-love. Of course it evolved, which is fantastic. And
it did.
I asked us the question that like completely took us off topic. So I recognize that. I wonder, do we want to go back to?
I think so, because I wanted to, I'll just start off by sharing. Maybe you guys have something to share, but I really wanted to share the second thing that really changed the way that I moved through life. And the second thing is that I was giving my energy to children, to the person I was in a relationship with, but not just like my physical energy, but also like my feeling of love. I was sending that outside of myself. I was sending it to my mom, everybody. But I realized like I had this deep hurt in my heart at some point, but I could send out the love everywhere. And so I realized that if I just redirected that to my internal self. So what I learned, and you could try this at home anytime, and eventually it just stays with you. But I picked somebody or something. I think it was probably like my daughter, and just felt like this overwhelming amount of love for her. And I just redirected it to me. And when I learned to do that and I flipped that energy, it started pouring into my heart little by little by little by little. And eventually I was overflowing with that love for myself. I was essentially filling my own cup. And then I was able from there to send it out instead of giving every bit of the energy outward and then being drained and there not being anything left for me. I ended up filling my own cup first. And then being able to help people and be there for people in a different way. And that was at my best because I was 100%. So you could do that in meditation. I could probably do a guided meditation or something, but really thinking about that person that you can attach that to really helped me, because for some reason it would be attached to people and places or things outside of me. But it wasn't attached to me. So it's just a redirection of energy. That's really all it is. And that application alone and the practice really did transform how I could access more light within me, you know, because at that time I only noticed like a shard. I'm like, oh, there's only a little bit. But if I could locate that little bit and then add to it, it just wiped away more of the dust. And then, you know, that did transform me. And then the other thing, it's not number 3. We might have another one of these, but I could share it later on, maybe towards the end of the video. But I also did a mantra, and that was, I am who I am, and that is good enough. Every morning and every night, I am who I am, and that is good enough. Because it helped me accept myself and, you know, not try to fill any shoes that weren't mine and my own. So that's what I wanted to share today.
I love that. And I just want to touch on that a little bit, Laura, because my kids are, I don't know how old your kids are, but my youngest is 16 now. And what I tell a lot of parents who have younger children, I know some of you guys have younger children, is I don't have regrets because everything I did was for a purpose. It was all guiding me. I'm fine with that. If I had one regret though, it would be that I didn't take more time for myself. And when, like what you're saying, when you can focus that and give that love to yourself, so many people, I've heard people say like, I don't have time to meditate. I don't have time to journal. I have young children. Then you can get up a little bit earlier. You can make the time, because you will be a better parent if you give yourself that focus. If you can put that love within yourself, like Laura's talking about, I don't care whether it's 10 minutes in the morning, and I don't care what 10 minutes entails, but if you can just give that love to yourself and give yourself a little bit of self-care, you'll be less stressed. You won't yell. Your kids will be better off. It's really, I just wanted to touch on that because I thought that was beautiful. And having been a mom, a single mother of 3 boys, there was a lot of stress in my life with them. And if I would have just given myself the care and taken the time for myself, I think I would have been a better parent. So.
Yeah, my daughter is 23 years old, and we actually have 2 little grandbabies. Robert has 2 kids as well. So, but the best advice I got regarding meditation is that if you don't have 5 minutes to meditate, then take 10, because you really need it.
Yeah, we all have time to do it, you know, and if it means getting up 10 minutes early, if it means going to bed 10 minutes later, it's 10 minutes. I've even heard people say, if you got to sit on the commode, like everybody poops, you know what I mean? Like if you're sitting on the commode, like take 5 minutes while you're on the commode and just meditate, just close your eyes. Don't play on your phone, and just take the time to close your eyes and breathe. It will change your life.
I have an idea. So with meditation and taking time for yourself, and then for taking it in meditation forms, meditation can look like a lot of things, and it's not always has to be traditional. For me, I love just finding the zone or whatever that would be. And for me, I love music. And when I have 2 toddler boys that are a year apart, so I understand your boy energy concept. It's a lot, but at the end of the day, you know, I can't predict how the day's going to go, but I can find my outlets. So I've always, you know, it's sometimes I connect to myself in different ways creatively, and it's not always the same, but I find that route. Sometimes for me, it is just putting some headphones on for 5 minutes and just listening to music that's very uplifting, has like this good vibe that kind of puts me in this idea of a higher vibe. Even I think when it comes to meditation, yes, we love the silence and coming down, but sometimes it's just nice to anything that can trigger that access to a higher vibe of clarity or a release of it. And that can look like a lot of things. If it's drawing or doing some art, listening to music, maybe hyper focusing on something you enjoy. It's a form of release, but it's also like considered daydreaming, also a form of meditation. So like we talk about meditation a lot in my sessions, and I always say it's not what you think, it's how you make it sometimes. And you know, you could run away to your car or find a few minutes to just have the silence. We all need the silence, but when you're kind of in the madness of life around you, you got to get a little creative with it. And there's actually a lot of little spaces in between where you can zone everything out around you and just lean into something that really just helps that feeling, if that makes sense. So that's
It
mine on like a
absolutely
high
makes sense.
fast pace a tad bit.
It makes absolute sense because meditation doesn't have to be this woo-woo concept. A lot of people think it's like us sitting with our hands like this and we're like being all like whatever. It doesn't have to be like Chelsea said. It can be just listening to music, you know, and you can just like have fun with that and visualize like how your life's going to be in a year and how amazing it's going to be. And, you know, that's a whole other ball game when we talk about manifestation, but like, we'll
Yeah.
talk about that later.
It could-
But I mean, it's just,
It could be a shower even, or yep, or going to the gym or working out in your house for 5 minutes. Something, you know, it's a form of self-care still, no matter. So it just make it meditative or in that zone tad bit.
I'll
That's
add
my-
2 quick points. So yes, I'm also a super busy mom. I do meditate. I do wake up early so that I can meditate and I make time for that. And I do the same thing at night. Sometimes I sacrifice reading at night so that I can meditate. So like I prioritize it above like even the most holiest of holy, which is like reading a book at night for me. So, but a quick tip. So I also get into kind of that mindfulness state, because what is mindfulness? Mindfulness is just observing the mind, recognizing that these are just thoughts and centering back into yourself, right? So I do that on a walk, just in peace. I observe nature. I think, you know, Chrissy, you talked about like hugging a tree, being in nature, right? So I do that while I go on a walk, while I'm walking my dog. I try to be very present with him in that moment. The other way is when I'm driving, we go on long drives. When I'm driving, it's interesting. Like I just turn everything off and I just drive in silence. And I find so much peace in that. And, you know, I really connect, with myself then. The other thing that I also wanted to mention is that at the very onset of my, self-love journey, I made the choice that every single day I would do one thing for me, one thing, because all I ever did was everything for everyone else. So, and I would define that one thing like I had a piece of chocolate with a cup of coffee, because that gave me joy and pleasure. And I did that for me, right? Or I took a 5-minute walk in between my meetings. I had moments where I would be so frazzled, but I would choose to start my meeting with my boss 5 or 10 minutes later, telling him like, hey, I'm sorry, like can't be there on time. I'll be there 5 minutes late. I'm not advocating that. I'm just saying I would find small ways to give back to me when I really needed my cup to be filled, and it would completely reset me. So even if it's a one tiny little thing, and then every night I kept myself responsible, where I had the accountability to write down in my journal, what was the one thing, that was my journal prompt, one thing I did for me today. And it would be like, I had a piece of candy, I listened to music, I danced in the bedroom by myself where nobody could see me. Like I did one thing for me. And that really, really helped me. And the accountability of like either thinking about it, like in your meditation at night or writing it out in your journal, that accountability to you. Make a promise to yourself and keep that promise to yourself. That's the one thing that I can tell you. Like one thing I've stopped doing is like, I've been recognizing that I've been eating too much sugar. So I made myself a promise that I was going to choose to eat less sugar for me, not for anybody else, not for what my scale would tell me, but for me. I made that promise and I'm keeping that promise for myself. So that's what self-love is making promises to yourself and keeping them for yourself.
Yeah, I agree. And the one thing that I went through recently is, you know, Robert had a major surgery, and this is the second time he's had the surgery. The first time he just went back to work at like 4 days. So that's what we thought was going to happen. This time it was very different, same surgery, different operation basically. And I noticed that I was tending to him, you know, like I was caring for him, and then plus running all of our businesses as much as I could, some more than others. But I realized like I haven't taken a walk. I haven't, I haven't gone to the gym because it's just things that we usually do together. I wasn't eating very well. And so I think that when life gets really busy, it's the most important time to remember those things, but also don't beat yourself up if you catch yourself slipping, because all I took like 2 days. I just started going for my regular walks. I was like, oh, I haven't spent any time with myself. And I think it's just because, we have these whirlwinds of change that come in and out of our lives, and they have an intention. But I went right back to nurturing myself and nourishing myself. But I forgot for like 2 or 3 days that I hadn't been doing that at all. So, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I noticed I started getting a little bit frustrated as to like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this. And like 15 minutes here, 15 minutes there. And then it just naturally, since you have the habit already, it just naturally fit right in. And I think when life gets hectic, it's okay to like put your energy to the people that you care about, but you're always going to default back to those habits when you can breathe. And that's the really good thing about having the self-love. Maybe I'll call it just your foundational, what you do for yourself as a foundation, because when times get tough, we do go back to whatever habits we've built. So I just didn't beat myself up. I jumped right back onto it. Easy, easy peasy. And then I just felt better. I was like, oh, thank goodness I found myself, because things happen in life. So it's just part of the experience.
Yeah, and somebody
Yeah.
wrote on, sorry,
Keep going.
on the
Take your
YouTube
time.
channel. So they wrote prayer and meditation have similar effects in the frontal lobe. So I just wanted to acknowledge that comment.
They do. I love that comment. Whoever put that in there. And I love that somebody else is on board with that, because that's amazing. Yeah, because I do it every morning, and I just want to touch on to everybody listening. Like once you get in that habit of like caring for yourself and loving yourself, like I have to meditate when I wake. The first 10 minutes that I wake up in the morning, and right before I go to bed. And if I don't do it, I don't know, because I never don't do it. Like I just do it every day. It's a habit. I have to do it. And I pray before I even meditate, and I ask my spirit guides to tell me what they need to tell me. And sometimes they talk to me, and sometimes they don't have anything to say. And that's just, and once you do the things, whatever it is that you find works for you, like I said, meditation has changed my life. But once you find these things that you do for yourself, and you give it at least 30 days, it will not be a chore. It will be a habit, and you can't stop. So
I think something that's worth addressing too is when you feel like you're being drained, or when stuff is there's just too much on your plate, or when you don't have the energy or what it is. I think that part of the journey to self is understanding what belongs to you and what doesn't, and understanding that every responsibility doesn't need an emotional response. Emotions are not as valuable, I think, as we like to convince ourselves. It's more that we're attached to our emotional experiences. But when you start to get overwhelmed, there's typically because you have taken on something that doesn't belong to you, because you're perfectly capable of handling everything that's yours. The body is a closed system. So when you find that you're taking on other people's emotional states, or you're taking on there's a big difference too between physical tiredness and emotional or spiritual tiredness. And as you if you fall off, let's say your life is changing. I think Laura mentioned that about, one day you're not hitting your routines properly or whatever. Is really, whenever you fall off and then you feel guilt, you're just comparing yourself to yesterday or the day before. And every single day you have to be willing to drop yesterday and take the day exactly as it is. And when you don't have comparison and you've built good habits, then it's very easy to pick something back up that has fallen off. It becomes a piece of cake, because the guilt is actually what divides you, or the shame is what divides you. And then you're like, oh gosh, I'm such a failure. And then you're carrying a big, heavy weight on yourself. And so it gets a lot harder to pick up habits that are better for you. So it's don't compare today to yesterday. Don't compare And I would say, well, I want to say don't compare yourself to yourself, but like really it's just don't be ambitious about your goals. Just be the type of thing that would produce what you want to achieve. You know, ambition is not as it's not valuable. It's really it just puts a lot of strain and stress on you because you're trying to get it. But if nothing in nature behaves that way, you know, like a seed doesn't have to try its hardest to be what it's going to be. It just is the type of seed that becomes that thing. And when you stumble across the depth of yourself, the being, when you really get into that, you really see what seed you are, and it will help you find purpose. It will help you know, hey, this belongs to me, this doesn't. Um, yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of like the end of what I want to say. It's just I noticed that we take on other people's burdens too much, um, because that really stems from not knowing that we can carry our own burden. And once you've picked up your own burden and carried your own load and taken responsibility for your life, then you know for a fact that other people can do it too. So when they come, oh, it's just too much, and you come across someone who's in their feelings, you can easily identify, okay, you're in your feelings. And it's not that we judge or hit anyone over the head or like, hey, you know, quit being so weak or whatever. Like, it's not that. It's you recognize how to direct them back to carrying their load, and you empower people. And that's really what we want to do.
That's very well said.
I want to add something to this. I love what you're touching upon, David. I think it's so important. I think there is an element to your journey in your life where you take radical responsibility, right? Because you want to get out of that victim mode and victim mentality. Oh, they did this to me. My parents were bad. You should hear about my life journey, right? Whatever. There's a really great joke that somebody once said. They said they run into two brothers. One is extremely successful and the other one is extremely poor. They asked the extremely successful brother, well, how come are you so successful? He's like, because I had an alcoholic father who beat me and tortured me every single day. Then they asked the really poor brother, why are you so poor? And why are you living on the streets? Because I had an alcoholic father who beat me every single day, right? It's all in perspective and how you choose to see it and where you step into your own power. So I really love what you're saying. And, you know, growing up, and I'm not going to get into my childhood, but growing up, like I definitely grew up knowing that I had to be an independent spirit, like to get to wherever goals I had in my life, right? And so I very much grew up believing that I had to always stand on my own 2 feet to get anywhere. And so this week I had this conversation with somebody, and I was sharing with him how, you know, I feel like, you know, in some aspects of my life, like I just can't do things on my own and I need to rely on other people to help me, and how much I hate it, right? And it frustrates the hell out of me. And so he said to me, he goes, Vicky, where you are, look out the window. Do you see the trees? I said, I do. And he's like, let me ask you, do the trees worry about, you know, borrowing water from one another? And I'm like, no. He's like, what do the trees stand on? I'm like, soil. He's like, oh, so do you think the trees feel guilty about standing on soil? And I'm like, no. He's like, when you had your baby and your baby needed you for, you know, sustenance, were you angry or upset with the baby for that? And I was like, no. And he goes, did you adore that baby? I was like, yeah. So he said, there's absolutely nothing. He's like, we are all a web and we're all interconnected. And he said, there's absolutely nothing wrong with leaning on each other when we need one another. It is not to say that you shouldn't be empowered and you shouldn't, you know, stand in your own power and you shouldn't take responsibility. But at the same time, I think there's something so beautiful about, you know, all of us being interconnected and all of us leaning on one another. And I think this is why we're doing this, right? Like, because I think we're just in the spirit of just service, right? Because we all recognize that anybody who happens to come here, we're all somehow interconnected. And so I really wanted to share that because it was a big aha moment for me, because I think there is a side of us where we focus so much on independence. I think there's also something beautiful about knowing that we're also all connected. And we're a node in a bigger web.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We need each other. We're social beings. We need each other. So go ahead.
We're also all one, right?
You're
So
all
just
one.
like nature, just like we are a part of nature. So
Mhm.
we're, the wind and the trees and the soil and the seeds and, the sunlight and the water, we're a part of nature physically. So
Absolutely. And I think it's important to touch on kind of what you guys said too about the fact that, like, sometimes we expect to feel the same every day. Like, I've struggled with this a little bit lately. We've had retrogrades and astrology, we've had the full moon happening, we've had all of these things, and I've been so tired and had a lot of emotions. And I think that we have to understand that, like, we're not going to wake up the same every day. Even if we do our practices, which is going to help, like, we're going to have off days and we're going to have great days, and it's all part of the journey, and it's the journey to self, and it's all okay. So for anybody watching, just understand that you can't expect to be on cloud 9 every single day, and you're not going to be in the dumps every single day. It's going to wax and wane. And that's just my last piece of advice, I guess, as far as that goes. Just understand that it's all a journey, and it's going to continue to be a journey, but it's worth it.
you're
One thing I
literally,
love too. Oh, go ahead, Laura.
oh, I was just going to say, we're all literally different people every moment. Like I'm a different person right now than I was when he started, because if we get into metaphysics, I'm sure Chelsea could touch upon that, but we're literally a different person in every moment. But yeah, go ahead, David.
Yeah, that's honestly exactly what I was about to touch on, is that people don't realize it's a lot easier to transform than it is to try to stay what you are and go after and move through time. Your transformation occurs outside of the limitations of time. And transformation in us is instantaneous because it has to do with our beliefs. It has to do with our thoughts. It has to do with being willing to let down of barriers. But it also has to do with that release of attachment, right? So if you're always attached to who you were 3 seconds ago, let's say someone comes in, they're disrupting you, and 5 seconds ago you were someone who was trying to do a live stream. But then, now your kid comes in, and it's easier to transform, and you will address the moment with everything in you, your fullness. And then you can instantly transform right back into what you're doing. But we get so hung up, we're brittle because we're not fluid in our minds. We're always attached to trying to be something instead of just being. And with those attachments, it blocks us from changing it up. And you really can get to a point where you're changing moment to moment. You can go straight from, extreme anger, like, oh, this just infuriates me, and you fill it with your full being, and then it's gone. And then whoop, the transformation happens, and you'll find that transformation starts happening without even thinking about it. You just meet the moment with yourself, and you attune to the reality you're in rather than trying to change reality to meet what you're trying to be. And a lot of people think they're going to lose themselves in that. But the reality is, the only way you lose yourself is in thinking that you are a stationary, non-transformable being. But you encompass every transformation you can imagine. So you are truly limitless. And when you understand that, there is no losing yourself in anything. It's just you doing what you're doing. Losing yourself is just thinking of losing the need to think and analyze yourself all the time. You're just in it, just flowing.
Yeah, which actually reminds me that I'll just share because we have a few minutes left, briefly. The third thing that I learned that really helped me transform when it came to self-love was accepting myself. And I had to accept that I was changing. First of all, I had to accept that I could let go, that I could surrender, that I didn't have to reject change. And not only did I have to accept myself, all the good parts that I saw, it was the bad and the ugly. It's like, oh, I don't like this part of myself. I wanted to change it, but the more I tried to focus on that part of myself and change it, the louder and louder it got, because what we focus on grows. So I decided instead to love that part of myself, and that transformed me, because then it integrated, and then it transcended, and then it became what it needed to be instead of me rejecting it. And I think that when it comes to self-love, there's been some rejection at some point. Now, whether it was from a partner or a child, as a child, when we were a child, but whenever we learn what rejection feels like, sometimes we reject ourselves. And whenever we learn what abandonment feels like, sometimes we abandon ourselves, because there was a time in my life that I completely abandoned myself. And it's because I learned how to do that by somebody else doing it. And so, just accepting every part of us, but not rejecting anything, and just loving it, loving all the sore spots, sending love to even the places that you want to change, knowing that you might want to change, that is okay, but rejecting it makes it persist. What you resist persists. So I just wanted to add that, because I feel like we are taught that maybe some parts of ourselves aren't good enough because someone else said so. And maybe we shouldn't like something within us because somebody else didn't. And none of that's true. None of it's true at all. So self-acceptance is huge. And there's a lot of layers to it. Just like David said, just accepting that you're going to be a different person, and that it's easier to transform than resist the change. Because you're going to change anyway, so you might as well not resist it. You're just dragging your feet in the mud if you resist your transformation. And then in my experience, when I came up to completely transform, it was so painful because I had been holding on so tight to a life that wasn't even meant for me anymore. So life gets better when you accept, life gets better when you allow, and life gets better when you surrender. But most importantly, really just acknowledging that the parts that you don't like about yourself need the most amount of love. And, with that's just the third thing, was total acceptance, complete acceptance in my journey. And, things come up, and then I just remember, like, oh, that's a part of myself that needs love right now. And it's a relationship that I have with me too. It's not, like I think I wrote in my book that it's a relationship that I'd have with a partner, but it's so much more important because it has to reciprocate to me, me to me. So
It's kind of like ripping the Band-Aid off. I want to add to that, because it's like a lot of people don't want to transform because it is really painful, and I'm not going to sugarcoat that. And it's there, every time you up level, every time you transform a little bit more, it's going to hurt. But it's like ripping off the Band-Aid. You do it, it's going to sting for a minute, or pouring peroxide in a wound, whatever it is. But then it's going to lead you to such a miraculous part of you. Like, it's just accepting everything and transforming your life, and it's actually going to be for the better. So just know, like, you have to go through those stinging moments. It's like when you pour peroxide on a wound, you're going to sting for a minute. You're cleaning out all of the debris, all of the infection. But then it's gonna be healed, and it's gonna be a beautiful scar that's left over, and it's all worth it.
Transformation is painful because of identity. And we don't take the word selflessness literal enough. So we hear the word selfless, and in our context, in our culture, we think it means selflessness is always a state of giving. But selflessness is a state of being that is not identified with anything. It's to be rid of identity completely. And in that selflessness, transformation is cake. It becomes extraordinarily easy because you're not trying. It goes back to identity is the attempt to be something, but the I am statement, arriving at that solid I am, and then moving through the life as an amness rather than a identity that comes with all kinds of baggage. And because when you have a strong identity, when you've identified with something, transformation feels like death. So it's going to trigger your fear impulse. It's going to trigger all the things that your body's designed to keep from happening. And so that resistance you feel is like falling and scratching and clawing every branch on the way down, because, but if you can move through that first transformation and experience that psychological death of identity, then it empowers you in a way that's incomprehensible, because without fear, not only can you transform, but selflessness does become an act of giving, because if you give to the point of your own extinction, it's not a big deal, because you've overcome death. And so it's like Vicky said before, why does the tree have so much faith? Well, it has faith in the soil, it has faith in nature, it has faith, but it's also not afraid to pass. It's lived, it's come, and it's gone. And I think that that's can be kind of a dirty word, like because we want to live fully, but living fully means to be not afraid of death, because death is a part of life. And if you can let go of that identity, then you can be more powerful than you ever imagined. There's nothing that will threaten you or attempt to wash you away, because there's nothing to wash away. Well, okay, it passed right through me, baby. I'm still here. Like.
Yeah, I saw a quote that said, I've been spending all this time trying to learn how to live, yet I just realized that I'm here to learn how to die. And, because we shouldn't fear it. But to touch upon that, I did heavily identify with my identity. I was a paralegal, I was a private investigator, I was a mom. All of that fell apart at the same time. And I was like, well, who even am I? And then I just had these, it's almost like the snake that sheds. I just went through death after death after death. Like, it really feels like you're dying because a part of you is dying. It's all this stuff that we built up or that we came here with. I don't know. But, I think that a lot of those, it causes a lot of confusion when you're going through those thoughts of like dying, because some people take it literally, but really you're shedding the skin, and it's a big piece of you that you don't need anymore. And it can be misinterpreted, but I felt that it's I can't say don't build up that, because otherwise what would I have done the journey for, right? Because it came from somewhere, so I had to shed it. But yeah, it's just part of the experience and the journey to self.
Well, didn't Eckhart Tolle say the secret to life is to die before you die?
A good one.
You gotta die to be reborn. You gotta die to have the rebirth. I mean, really. And it is shedding, it is shedding. I mean, gosh, it's painful, but it's shedding that you don't need that part of you anymore. So
It's to die before you die. It's to die. It's that ego death.
the ego death, yeah.
So that you can remember your true essence and then truly live, So yeah, I remember like reading The Power of Now the first time and just being like mind blown, and then reading it again and like understanding it a little differently, right? Mind blown every time. But I remember that quote really sticking with me.
Yeah, death really becomes kind of and remember, I always want to clarify this, because in the woo-woo culture, people are like, you gotta die, and everyone's like, what does this mean? It's psychological death. All right. It's dying to the identity. And that becomes very fun. Honestly, it's like, oh, well, what can I create today? What can I engage in today? What can I learn today? And I find that everything is enriched, even learning, it increases the speed at which you learn, the way that you process information. You just raw and completely, it's a pure experience. And that seems overwhelming to an identity, because an identity is a lie. In essence, it's something that you're just choosing to believe, but it's no more than a thought. It's no more than an imitation. It's a vestige. And the reality is beyond identity. So when you meet problems, you find that you solve them faster. You find that you have answers quicker. You find that you see where the danger is coming from faster. Everything is just happening at a much faster rate. And that's, in my opinion, that's fun. To an identity, it doesn't seem fun, though, because you're not in control. But when you relinquish that control, it's a blast, because you're like, oh man, how do I get to creatively solve a problem today? And you're fully engaged. And when you're fully engaged, you're fully alive, because presence is application.
It is fun. You're right, David. It's absolutely fun. Once you can let go and just accept that, it's super freaking fun.
My inspiration for all my creative aspects or works or anything I do in a creative, even my academics inspiration, it all comes from within in those experiences. So, and I have a bit of an author, but I'm a creative author. So it's like free writing, but it's all of the in-depth nitty-gritty of the humanity and figuring it out and embracing it and romanticizing it, bringing it to light, giving it a platform. I think at the end of the day, we just really need to take our humanity and give it a big ass hug.
So I think that we're at about time. And it's been such a beautiful and a rich conversation. I want to ask, Mariah, we see you here on Zoom, and then those of you who are joining us on the YouTube channel. Before we close out, want to ask you, do you have any questions? Do you have any topics that you were hoping we would cover, but we didn't? How can we be of service to you? Because we're truly here, we love talking to each other, but we also love answering your questions and being of service to you, because this is really why we're doing this. We're building a community, and, we really want to be here for you. So do you have any questions or topics that you were hoping to hear about that you didn't hear about that you'd like for us to cover before we close out for the evening?
Yeah, please enter those in the chat if you do. And then I also just wanted to ask, Chrissy, you maybe put your Facebook or your TikTok, your social media.
Yeah, because if anybody also, if anybody has any questions that they come up with later, like say tomorrow, you're like, crap, or like a topic that you're like, I wish they would have covered this. I mean, you can find any of us. I think everyone's put their stuff in here. You can find us and message us, or however it is. And just, I mean, like Vicky said, we're here to be of service to you. So we really want to hear from you guys and help you guys. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and
why don't
Dave,
we, yeah, sorry.
Dave, I just wanted to add, and David, if you could put a link to your book maybe in the chat. I know you sent it to me. But that
I'm
would
going to
be,
try
yeah,
to
there
get
you
you guys.
go.
I'm going to try to get you guys a guided meditation one of these days, but I have to figure out the technology. So just give me a couple weeks. I will get you guys a guided meditation going.
Yes, and I have free resources on my website, lauraperry.com. And I know we put Chelsea's website in there. David, where's your book available? Where could we find that at?
It's on Amazon. I'm trying to type it in. I'm trying to type it in, but I would have to get the link on Amazon and have to exit. But
okay, but we got the title.
Yeah, the title is A Beaver Can Be. It's on Amazon. It's a children's book, and it's essentially about my journey to the self and really recovery of the inner child. And anyone who gets that book, I encourage you to read it aloud to your children, your niece, your nephew, your grandkid, whoever it might be. Read it out loud and speak it not only into their life, but into yours simultaneously. That's kind of what I designed it for. So yeah, that's what I hope you can get out of it.
Awesome. I think my dog wants to say hi. So we're going to say hi. This is Chloe right here. She's like been hogging the camera. So say hi, Chloe.
Can be
Big
found.
baby.
I'm typing this in, guys, manually on my phone. So next time we will just have all of this typed out, and I will make sure to get this in here. Soul Connections 11. This is on TikTok. Chelsea, where can people find you? I want to make sure I put that into the YouTube chat.
Okay, so it's chelseaturpincoxie.com. I just posted it in the chat, both on the Zoom and YouTube, because I'm following both. So I don't know if that.
Oh, you did. You put that in Zoom in the YouTube. Okay. Awesome.
In the actual YouTube live aspect, yeah. So I've been multitasking while everyone talks.
Awesome. No, I love that, because I'm trying to figure out, like, I'm
I shared, yeah, and I shared the live like an hour in, and I was like, why didn't I do this sooner? I should have done it immediately. I went on your YouTube and shared it to my Facebook page. So I've been multitasking.
Wait, Chelsea, how did you do that? How did you do
I'm
that?
on my cell phone, just going on her YouTube channel, sharing it directly to my Facebook page, and I tagged you, but I couldn't tag Laura. because
Oh,
it
you
was
tagged
showing
me.
up as your
Okay.
page versus your personal. So I wasn't
Okay.
able to tag Laura, but I just to help
Yeah.
it.
I didn't know that we could see. I'm technology. Like I said, I'm going to get you guys a website. I'm going to get you guys a guided meditation. Just give me, I just can't, like the technology. Oh, cool. Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, we're just getting some movement slowly but surely.
Slowly but surely, consistency. We're going to be here.
Consistency. We are going to be here
I was
every
like, we're live
Well,
now. Let's
the
go.
The funny part is like we're 2 hours in almost, and now people are starting to join.
Are they
Because
really?
I said it as like I shared it like 30 minutes ago on Facebook. I was like, oh my God, I should have shared this like an hour ago. But it's pre-recorded and it will be here later. So it's a beautiful thing.
Yes. So, for
But
those
next
who are
time I'm gonna
joining
do it like immediately.
Yeah. Okay.
So why don't we go through the agenda and let people know how and where they can find us? So we put all of our contact information in the Zoom chat. We also added it in the chat on the YouTube channel. Also, we are committed to being here on Wednesdays at 5:30 Pacific, 8:30 East Coast time. We cover topics that span the gamut. But to the past couple of days, the past couple of sessions, we've talked about self-love. Today, we also, expanded the conversation and we touched on spirituality. What does the journey to self mean to us? We're going to continue to expand on these topics. So please, 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 we're only going to continue to grow and we're only going to continue to add more value. But, we're truly here in service of you. This is why we're here. We've been on these journeys. We've gone through so much. We've learned so much. And we're truly here just to genuinely share everything that we know. If anybody's interested in being on the hot seat or it's in being coached on the spot, we welcome that too. This is what we live for. So that is what ignites our souls. And we just really are so excited to be connecting with each and every one of you. So once again, every Wednesday, 5:30 Pacific, 8:30 East Coast time. Continue to join us, continue to participate, ask us questions, and we're here in service of you. That's why we're here. The journey to self. Let's continue to grow and evolve together. We can't wait for this to unfold for all of us.
And that's a wrap, guys.
I think that's it. That's a wrap.
We love you guys.
All
Have
right.
everyone have a great night.
Have a great night,
Good to
everybody.
see you.
guys.
Bye.
Next
Bye.
Wednesday.
Great to see you.
Bye.